Hi, my name is Abhijit Chirumala. I'm from Northern California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm a CF patient in my 20s.
Hello, I'm Devanshi Dubey. I was born and raised in India, but I live in San Diego, and I have cystic fibrosis.
I am Abhishek Roy.
Hello, I'm Navrati, and we live in San Jose. We are parents to a teenager with cystic fibrosis who got diagnosed last year.
Hi, I'm Anish. I'm 15 years old and I live in San Jose and I have cystic fibrosis.
Hi, my name is Rohini and I live in Menlo Park, California.
Hi, I'm Leah and I have cystic fibrosis.
I have an older brother who also has CF, and he was diagnosed at the age of 5. So he was diagnosed a little later after birth, and then because of that, due to the obviously genetic component of cystic fibrosis, I had to also undergo testing, and then I was later diagnosed at the age of 3.
I had frequent pneumonia growing up, but it wasn't until when I was 9 or 10 years of age when it just started and never went back.
I was diagnosed at the age of 14 and my diagnosis happened because I got really, really sick for over a month. And actually throughout my whole life, I had been coughing and I had been having respiratory issues, mainly coughing though, only coughing.
Since then, I had a misdiagnosis with tuberculosis. I was stopped on those medications, and then I transitioned to another doctor who was 250 kilometers away from my city, and there I was diagnosed with ABPA, or allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, and bronchiectasis. And fast forward to 2021, I came to San Diego to go to college, and here at the age of 19, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis.
We found out about Ria's diagnosis through the newborn screening. She was born in California, and so through that process, we were notified through our pediatrician around day 30 of her life.
Me and my brother have definitely had just different disease journeys. I would say for sure with me, I have a lot more pulmonary symptoms or just respiratory infections compared to him. I've spent a lot more time in the hospital compared to him, but that's kind of been my main issue with CF. While I feel like for my brother growing up, I remember he had more digestive issues as well as sinus problems. I know that he's had a lot more sinus surgeries or sinus related complications than me. And so it's interesting because even though my brother and I are the most similar people that we could be to each other on earth, we're also so different. And so our experiences with CF have definitely been different as we've aged and gotten older.
During my second semester of freshman year in high school, I fell immensely sick. That is what led to my diagnosis. So what actually happened was, my pulmonologist was running a lot of tests because they had found mucus in my lungs. And the only thing I knew about cystic fibrosis was really like mucus in the lungs was all the knowledge I had at that time of cystic fibrosis.
The diagnosis was a complete shock to all of us, particularly because we really hadn't heard of it in the South Asian community. And in fact, when our pediatrician told us about her diagnosis, he noted that only 2 other people in the world had been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis with the variant that came from my side of the family.
When I first came to the US in 2021, at the age of 19, I was still traveling with an active lung infection and hemoptysis here and there. And it was the very first quarter of my school at UCSD, and I had a bad episode of hemoptysis, and I was taken to the emergency room where I was in the critical care unit for a couple weeks, and their physician who worked in the cystic fibrosis department was doing rounds and was seeing inpatient patients. And there I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis after getting the sweat chloride test and the genetic test.
So one day I was in the car with my dad alone, and we were driving somewhere, I don't really remember where. And my mom was at home. We were all very tense. I was still sick, and I told my dad, what if I have cystic fibrosis? And he had never heard of this before. And the reason I didn't want to bring it up in front of the whole family was because like we were in too much stress, and I didn't want like my small thought to cause more stress or anything.
He was born in Korea and lived there until 8 and until 14 here in US without diagnosis. And I strongly feel if he hadn't self-diagnosed, maybe today also we wouldn't have his diagnosis.
For a majority of my childhood, I didn't know anyone, especially of South Asian descent, that had CF outside of me and my own brother. So that was definitely, I think, tough at first because it sort of makes it harder to sort of believe that you do have it, even though I knew I had it. And I know that my mom had talked about that for a while when we were first diagnosed with this, how she was in a bit of a denial phase with it, just because she was always told that historically CF has always been sort of a white or Caucasian disease. And so it was kind of hard for her to believe that, we had it and that there might have been some mistake, even though, deep down she knew that it was actually there.
When the test results from my cystic fibrosis tests came back, I was taken aback. I had both a feeling of guilt and relief. Guilt for the years lost, and relief because I finally had all the answers that I never had when I was back in India, and I didn't know what was going wrong with my body.
The doctors were suspecting another incurable disease which he has because of his GI thing, but they were no way suspecting CF, was not in their dictionary, was not in my dictionary, more so because when I read, even after Anish mentioned, and when I read, a very big relief was that no, it's a Caucasian disease, it cannot be true. Until I brought it to the doctor saying that, doctor, can you please tell him that he should not be worried that he has CF because it's a Caucasian thing. And she was like, Mom, it's not Caucasian, that's a myth, and I can see probably he has it.
When I called my dad to tell him that I have been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, the only emotion he showed was curiosity and a little bit of relief, because he was also relieved that finally we know what's going wrong, so finally I can get access to the correct treatment. And then he said that when I was in India and when I was very small, too young to remember, he actually had a conversation with my doctor in India and asked him if my symptoms align with cystic fibrosis, as he was always researching random stuff to know more about what was going wrong with my body. And at that time, the doctor mentioned that no, cystic fibrosis is mostly common in Europeans and white people, so there's no possibility I could have that condition.
So Ria's shared a lot about what is challenging about having cystic fibrosis, and she's feeling a little bit shy right now, but here are things that I know that she struggles with, and maybe she'll chime in. So Ria, would you say it's hard waking up early in the morning before school to make sure you get your treatments in?
Yes.
Yeah. And what about when you have to take antibiotics, the taste of that medicine?
Yes.
Is it tasty?
No.
No? And then what about when sometimes we have to adjust the schedule and play dates early or come home early because you have to get those treatments in? Is that tough?
On the pediatric side of things, like being in isolation for 2 to 4 weeks is pretty stressful and tiring. And so I feel like that adjustment getting back into the real world is also very hard, and something that I felt like I wasn't really prepared for. And I feel like the more I've gotten older and the more I've gone through it, honestly, it's become even harder, because I just feel like it kind of accumulates and takes its toll over time. And so that's something that I've realized for myself over the years, is just to set more boundaries with what I'm capable of doing, and also just being okay with the fact that for that first week kind of post-hospitalization, that I don't always have to rush into everything immediately. I can take my time. I have a nonsense mutation, which means unfortunately I can't take any of the current modulators that are out there like Trikafta. And so I feel like for me, my CF care journey hasn't really changed. I've over the years, as I've done more advocacy events, I've been able to connect and talk to people that are on modulators, and to see how much their lung function has improved and their overall quality of life is, really powerful and really awesome to see. But then at the same time too, I know for me, like, nothing much has changed. And so I think that's been kind of tough. Is at first I didn't really feel too much of that feeling. Like, I didn't feel too mad about that or whatever. I think I've always been someone that tries to not worry about things that I can't control. But definitely as I've gotten older now, into my, going into my mid-20s, and, seeing a lot of other people having success, it's hard to not also want to have that success as well. And, I think there's naturally questions where I can tell that the care overall nationwide is kind of changing, and the objectives are changing because of Trikafta. And so I think I've kind of taken it upon myself now to realize that, I want to be more vocal about not having modulators and how there's still so much more work that needs to be done, and that care shouldn't change too much going forward, just because a majority of the people can benefit from these medications, so that we can still have improved care for all with CF. And so I think that's really important still going forward, and just a helpful reminder for care teams overall.
We're lucky. She has access to a modulator, but I know that so many people of color have different variants that are not eligible for modulators. And they deserve them too. We need this research. We need medical funding to make sure that everyone has access to this groundbreaking support to make living with cystic fibrosis a little bit more manageable.
I'm not currently eligible for modulators. For context, I believe that modulators can significantly improve the effects of cystic fibrosis on a patient, but I have some rare mutations which don't make me eligible for modulators, so there's nothing for now that I can do about it.
Rhea wouldn't be where she is today, doing as well as she is doing, being able to swim twice a week, play 90 minutes of tennis once a week, outside in recess every single day, without the incredible work and the research that has gone into cystic fibrosis. She's one of the lucky ones that is on a modulator, and we have seen improvements in her whole life, in what she's capable of doing, in her blood work, and it's remarkable. And I firmly believe it is because of the research that has gone into this rare disease. And I am eternally grateful as a mother that research took place and funding was there for that research, so that my baby girl can live a full life.
I really like math and computer science, so I'm actually already doing some research in computer science, and especially with machine learning and AI. So I want to pursue computer science and hopefully use my knowledge that I have probably to help people like me, cystic fibrosis, who maybe, like, if I can get some data set and I can apply my knowledge on these data sets, I believe I can help.
Even though my knowledge is pretty limited, what I do remember hearing about or knowing is that every state has different kind of criteria or mutation criteria for screening, and each state has different numbers of mutations that they test. And so it's really important that there's a sense of consistency across the board that we're testing for most mutations, because from what I know, that there are a lot of people of color, for example, that have mutations that aren't part of the normal Delta 508 or majority. And so it's really important that we don't miss that, because obviously that can affect treatment outcomes and just health outcomes overall going into the future, especially now in the new age of Trikafta.
So one thing which we encourage also, Anish, as a project, to spread awareness, to talk about it, to advocate it, not to be shy of it. You own it, and it's a part of you, and we love you with everything that you have, and so does with CF. But the word has to spread. It's a myth that it cannot happen to it's a Caucasian thing. No, and we definitely need to increase the awareness.
For people having a late diagnosis with cystic fibrosis, all those years of uncertainty and most likely hopelessness, I deeply understand and resonate with it, because I've been there, and I was in a place where I was extremely hopeless, even after being diagnosed with cystic fibrosis and having all the answers, the support and the community, and all the updated research that's being done, and the hope that rises in you after all those years of hopelessness. It's all worth it, and it only gets better. Your perspective will shift towards, oh no, this disease is what I am today, and it shaped me who I am, and I'm very thankful for it. So just wait for that moment and be patient. Everything works out.